Hello, Notre Dame, and welcome to the second floor of the NDTV studios in the Duncan Student Center as we bring you Irish Sports Roundtable, talking about Notre Dame sports. And welcome to our beautiful set and my awesome crew. We have John Horlander and Austin Rooney with us today, and we're talking everything Notre Dame sports, and we're going to start with men's basketball. And the past two games, they went Saturday night against Virginia Tech, right to the highlights. First half shooting for Virginia Tech, lights out, 44% compared to Notre Dame's 26%. By the way, this was the first win for Virginia Tech against Notre Dame since the 1973 NIT. Justin Robinson for Virginia Tech, absolutely ridiculous. How big was this shot, by the way? TJ Gibbs at the end of the first half cut the lead, or cut the deficit to 7.
Oh, it was absolutely crucial. Notre Dame was really in a bad spot. It was an opportunity for Virginia Tech to actually go up 12 points at half. And instead, Notre Dame gets a stop defensively and hits a 3. And all of a sudden, it's a 7-point game. And at that point, it's feasible for Notre Dame to actually make a comeback.
TJ Gibbs has been huge for this team in the absence of Matt Farrell and Bonzi Colson. Second half, Irish climbing back in it. Virginia Tech would climb to a 15-point lead. And how about that smooth move? Chris Clark, Virginia Tech finished with 12 points and another 3 for Robinson. They made it very difficult. They shot lights out from beyond the arc, but Notre Dame did not go away. Here come the Irish. Marty Gebbin down low. Another nice find from TJ Gibbs to John Mooney, gets the N1. Irish within 11. Mooney under the bucket. Gets it within single digits, and then TJ Gibbs went off. Another 3 from Gibbs, and then this one would cut it to a one-possession game. 3 points, but that would be as close as Notre Dame got. This was a huge play right here. Notre Dame had a good chance to get that board. They weren't able to get it. And then in the final moments of the game is where Virginia Tech really turned it on. They scored the final 6 to seal it, including this drive. Once again, Chris Clark. Lights out, and then the nail in the coffin. Turnover, outlet pass, and a dunk. And another heartbreak for Notre Dame. Once again, out-rebounded an opponent 28-39, including 15 offensive boards to Virginia Tech's 6. But Virginia Tech was unconscious from behind the arc, 14 of 25 from three-point land.
Yeah, it's really difficult to win when a team is shooting that well. They shot 50% from the floor, 56% from behind the arc, and they were 8 for 10 from the free throw line. No matter how good Notre Dame seemed to be getting their mojo going defensively, they just couldn't stop Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia Tech, again, they shot lights out even into the middle of the second half. Once Notre Dame started to make some sort of a comeback, you know, they got a few defensive stops, but it was really Notre Dame's offense that got them back in the game in the second half.
By the way, points off the bench, Virginia Tech really cleared Notre Dame in that category. 19 points off the bench to Notre Dame's 5. But what's interesting is the second chance points. The Irish with 18, Virginia Tech with just 8. And again, that goes back to the rebounding percentages. Notre Dame has done extremely well on the boards, including against Virginia Tech. 15 offensive boards to Virginia Tech's 6. Yeah, it's been a bright spot in this otherwise rough stretch.
It absolutely has, and it's been fantastic to see John Mooney step up in the absence of Bonzi Colson. You know, John Mooney's a guy that came off the bench last year. He'd see 3 minutes a game, maybe. This year, you're expecting to see 5 to 10 minutes a game, maybe 15 on a good night. Bonzi Colson goes down. John Mooney, all of a sudden, he's playing 30 minutes. He is Notre Dame's power forward right now, and he has stepped up in a big way. He put up 15 points versus Virginia Tech and did it again versus Duke. Again, he is a guy who is going to be very important in the future of Notre Dame basketball.
Yeah, a lot of these guys have to step up in the absence of Colson and Gibbs, Farrell and DJ Harvey. Gibbs, by the way, finished with 27 points against Virginia Tech. He emptied everything he had in the tank, as Coach Bray said, and he really took that one tough. I mean, after the game, they're singing the alma mater. He's got his head down. Coach Bray's trying to console him. It's a lot of pressure for the young sophomore.
Yeah, and I got to give it up to him. He averaged 15 minutes a game last year. He's upped that to 37.2. He's played 360 of the 370 minutes so far this season. He's played 97% of these minutes for Notre Dame, and especially in the absence of guys like Farrell and Colson who can create offensively for themselves, you need a guy like TJ Gibbs who maybe doesn't have the most experience, but he can step up and he can create things offensively for himself.
Yeah, another loss for the Irish, and the road would not get any easier. They would have to travel the next day to Durham, North Carolina, Cameron Indoor Stadium. Always a difficult place to play. There's Coach Bray and Coach K, two greats in the ACC. And Duke got it early and often. Gary Trent Jr. finished with 22 in this one. That was one of his 6 threes on the night. But as you mentioned, Austin, John Mooney played a great game for the Irish, had a great first half in this one.
He did. Not only did John Mooney play well, but also, I mean, TJ Gibbs. TJ Gibbs, again, puts up 22 points this time around. And Notre Dame just didn't quite get the secondary scoring they were looking for out of guys like Rex Pfluger or Martinez Gevin. Gevin had a down game, I think, in both of those last 2 contests. You're exactly right on John Mooney. John Mooney continues to step up both in the Virginia Tech game and in the Duke game. Both games he played very, very well.
Grayson Allen, the Academy Award winner, gets the N1 on this one. No tripping involved, but a nice play from Allen. And then TJ Gibbs in the lane with the right hand.
And we can't understate how difficult this game was going to be anyway for Notre Dame, even if they had their star players in Farrell and Colson. Coming in without their 2 best players, I mean, this was a very tall order for them to come into the game.
Duke did a lot of that in the second half, by the way, and then a steal. Trayvon Duval was the #1 projected point guard in last year's recruiting class, and he shows why. But Notre Dame, give him credit. They were able to stay in it. John Mooney with the dunk down the lane, and they got it to within 6 at one point, but Duke just was too much in the second half. Grayson Allen again right to the hole, and Allen, ridiculous. Marvin Bagley with a 3, and then here's Bagley with the left hand in the lane. That was part of the 18-0 run, and Duke eventually able to come out with a victory. They're so tough at home, and especially against for a Notre Dame team with a short roster. It was very difficult for them to keep up with Duke, and now the Irish find themselves at a crucial point in their season. They're 13-9, 3-6 in ACC play. And we talked last week about the NCAA tournament hopes. Not to call you out, but my man, you said that it was without question a foregone conclusion they're making the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure that that's true at this point. Take a look at the remaining schedule. Take on NC State Saturday. They already beat NC State earlier in the year, but it's a much different roster this time around.
Notre Dame didn't have Bonzie Colson in that game, didn't have Matt Farrell for half of the game, but they had DJ Harvey in that game. And Notre Dame had 26 points between Harvey and the half that Farrell did play. So again, Notre Dame wins that game 88-58. It's a 30-point win for Notre Dame. You take away 26 of those points from those 2 guys. I'm sure some other guys make up a few of those points. It's probably a 10 to 15-point win at least. But still, this is a very different game. It's a roster that a team that hasn't won has lost each of its last 6 games. So it's going to be a much tougher game than a home game versus NC State.
Yeah, and it was that NC State game where Matt Farrell went down with that ankle injury. And after that loss, NC State turned it right around and they beat Duke. They've also beat North Carolina this year. So this is a much improved North Carolina State team coming in against a battered and demoralized Notre Dame basketball team in desperate need of a win. However, things are looking up. Notre Dame 5-0 at NC State. Very good on Tobacco Road in there in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's true.
This is a game that Notre Dame, I would say it's a must-win. Bray said at the beginning of the season they need to get to 9-9 in the ACC. They're sitting at 3-6 right now. And this is step 1 to getting back on track and getting back to 9-9 and making that push for the tournament. I'm going to stick with my assertion. I think that Notre Dame will make the tournament.
Okay, Gibbs finished, by the way, with 22 points in the Duke game, but he played 39 minutes. And as you mentioned earlier, he's been averaging 37 minutes in this stretch when Notre Dame hasn't had Bonzie Colson or Matt Farrell. And he's been taking a lot of the pressure himself. If you take a look at the Notre Dame lineup, Austin, they basically play 7 guys primarily and only 3 guards. There's nobody coming off the bench that can really give Temple Gibbs a lot of relief.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you have a guy like Elijah Burns and Austin Torres are usually the 2 guys who are coming off the bench. As you mentioned, neither of them are guards. The only thing you can really do is, I guess, put maybe Nicolo Jogo at point guard and then sort of make Rex Pfluger the 2 in that situation. But again, there really isn't anything you can do in terms of giving TJ Gibbs a rest. And I'd like to mention the bench points, or the lack thereof, I guess, in the games versus Virginia Tech. They had 5 points off the bench, Nicolo Jogo included. That's 8 points from the 5, 6, and 7 guys from Notre Dame. They're going to have to get more bench and tertiary scoring than that. And I think an even bigger point than that, though, is they have to play better defense. Notre Dame, they scored 75 points versus Virginia Tech. They even put up 66 versus Duke. Those aren't great numbers, but they're good enough to get wins. We saw them play Syracuse. They allowed 49 points. We saw them play Georgia Tech. They allowed 59, 60 points. If they can do that again, they don't need to have that many points off the bench, but they have to play better defense. They can't be allowing 80 and 88 points.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. You talked about Notre Dame's need for a different outlet for scoring. TJ Gibbs with 27 against Virginia Tech, 22 against Duke. He's really carrying the entire workload so far. And if Notre Dame is going to break this 6-game losing streak, if they're going to find their way back in the ACC, they're going to have to find somebody else to step up offensively. Pfluger had 15 against Virginia Tech. He needs to be putting up those numbers consistently. Martinez Gebben, he was almost invisible in the first half against Virginia Tech. Came back and finished with 10 and 9, but he needs to be putting up bigger numbers. If Farrell and Colson are not going to play, and we won't see Colson until March, we could see Matt Farrell as early as this Saturday against NC State. But if those guys aren't on the court, you have to step up if you're Martinez Gebben, Rex Pfluger.
Yeah, the Irish haven't been shooting the ball well either in their last 7 games or so, under 40% from the floor. But you mentioned John Mooney, 14 points he's averaged in the last 3 games. Talk about guys who are stepping up in the absence of Notre Dame's primary scorers. He's one of them. Another one that you mentioned, John, was Jogo, had 10 points versus Duke. So I guess the sort of diamond in the rough during this stretch for Notre Dame has been that they've seen these guys who at the beginning of the season may have not had a significant impact step up and really contribute for the team.
Absolutely. I mean, John Mooney is going to be one of the centerpieces for Notre Dame basketball moving forward in the next couple of years. He's just a sophomore, just like TJ Gibbs. You look 2 years down the road, you have a TJ Gibbs, a senior, John Mooney, a senior. These are guys who can really contribute, and that could be a really, really good basketball team. I mean, if you look back 2 years, Bonzie Colson is not a Player of the Year candidate. I mean, he's a guy who's a sophomore who is coming off the bench primarily. So again, this is a team that 2 years out could be a really, really good team led by TJ Gibbs and led by guys like John Mooney.
Yeah, and I think that this puts Mike Bray in an interesting position. He's had a great run the last 3-4 years with this Notre Dame basketball team. And what's he done it with? Experience. It's been on the back of senior leadership and guys who have been playing together for a long time. And all of a sudden, you've got injuries to Farrell and Colson. All of a sudden, that senior leadership that you rely so much on is gone. And so you're forced guys who are younger with less experience to step up. Bray's got to coach these guys and get them motivated to get them making plays. And I think there's no reason to wrap this season up and throw it away and look ahead to next season, because Notre Dame still has a lot of fighting to do. But if you look ahead to next season, you've got 4 top 100 guys coming in, plus TJ Gibbs and John Mooney and Elijah Burns getting way more experience than you had anticipated they would. I think that Notre Dame is set up very well for next year with a lot of guys with a lot of experience and a lot of talent.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the NC State game this Saturday. You mentioned that it's a must-win game, and I think to a large extent that's true. But even if Notre Dame gets Matt Farrell back, he's only going to be playing for probably 18 to 20 minutes. Austin, do you think that's enough of an impact to take the pressure off TJ Gibbs and give Notre Dame a better chance to win?
I think it does to an extent, because it gives Notre Dame a really strong starting 5. I mean, nothing against Nicolo Jogo. He's played relatively well in the absence of Matt Farrell. But if you can have TJ Gibbs out there with Matt Farrell, and then you add Rex Pfluger, John Mooney, and Martinez Gebben out there, that's a real starting 5 that can do some damage offensively and plays pretty well defensively as well. So I think that they can do better with that starting 5 as opposed to what they have right now. Every single player they have is important. They only have 7 guys total playing. If you add an extra guy, it'll give everybody a little bit more rest, and it will give TJ Gibbs some rest. He won't have to play 39 minutes, maybe he plays 35. And that can make a difference in the final minutes of a game when a player is really tired.
Yeah, it really does look like in the second half, they run out of gas. I mean, these guys are playing a lot of minutes in the game. By the way, NC State coming off a big win, an impressive performance on the road, a 95-91 OT victory over North Carolina. So these guys are playing probably the best basketball they've been playing all season long.
That's exactly right. And they're coming up against a Notre Dame team that is in desperate need of some good basketball. And so it's going to be a tough matchup for sure. And it's very difficult to win on the road against NC State, and they're coming in hot. But I think that the most underrated aspect of Farrell's game, and Bonzie Colson as well, but we don't anticipate seeing him, is that when he's on the floor, he commands attention. When Matt Farrell has the basketball, or when he's moving off the ball, he commands defensive attention, which opens things up for guys like Gibbs and Pfluger to make plays offensively. When those guys aren't on the floor, who is commanding that sort of defensive attention to open things up for other guys? There's no guy who, as an opposing coach, you're like, we got to make sure we lock him down.
That's a great point. I also think that with 9 games left in the regular season, Notre Dame probably needs to win 6. We mentioned that 9-9 mark, but let's say they don't get there. Let's say they win 4 or 5. Then you have a lot of pressure going into the ACC tournament. Do you see them making the NCAA tournament?
So I think it's completely contingent on what happens in the ACC tournament. So as you just said, there are 9 games left in the schedule. Notre Dame has 4 of those 9 games against the bottom 3 teams in the ACC. They've got 2 games versus Boston College, 1 home, 1 away, and then they have 1 game versus Wake Forest. They have 1 game versus Pitt. Now, if Notre Dame, let's say they win 3 of those 4 games, and then maybe they pick up a win over Miami, a win at home over Florida State. There are a couple other games they can pick up wins. Of course, NC State on Saturday. These are the really big games Notre Dame can win. I think Notre Dame probably pulls off 4 or 5 of those games, and that puts them at 17 or 18 wins. Now you have Bonzie Colson back, Matt Farrell, DJ Harp. You have a healthy roster for the ACC tournament. All of a sudden, you put two wins together in that tournament, then I think you're a team that makes the NCAA tournament. But I think you're going to need 19 or 20 wins to get there, and I think that Notre Dame is probably going to need 2 of those in the ACC tournament. Yeah,
they're setting themselves up right now to put a lot of pressure on those couple of games. Obviously, they're not going to get a bye. So if, let's say, they're at 18 wins, they face, they're probably not going to have a great seed in the ACC tournament. They're going to face a tough team. How realistic is it at the end of the year that Notre Dame strings together a couple of wins to push them into the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I don't know how likely it is, but I do know that Mike Bray is one of the best coaches in the country in these high-pressure, big game scenarios. And he's got the tools to make it happen. This is a team that can definitely make that happen. I think it's just a matter of getting their confidence back with a win here soon. At NC State, Boston College coming in. One of these games, you get a good win, get the mojo back, and I think that this is a team that could rattle off a couple of wins in a row and get themselves back into a competitive position.
Here's a question I have for both of you. How much do you think that the committee will take into account the injuries that Notre Dame has faced this season?
That's a great question. I think they'll take it into account to an extent. I don't think they're just going to put in a Notre Dame team with 17 or 18 wins. Notre Dame, I think they still have to get to that 19-win threshold. But I think some other teams in the same shoes with the same schedule maybe needs to put up 20 or 21 wins. I think the committee may give them a slight edge, but they're going to need to do something to actually get to the NCAA tournament. They're not going to give them a free pass because they've had the injuries.
I would tend to agree, but I do think that if you're the committee, you have to take Notre Dame as the team that they are, which is a team without Farrell and without Colson. If Farrell comes back and starts making an impact, then great, and that will add to their resume. But the committee can't just say, oh, well, Bonzie Colson's coming back, and he's obviously going to put up 25 and 15 every game. So Notre Dame is actually a 22-win team if you count Bonzie Colson. No, if Notre Dame wins 19 games, the committee is going to consider them as a 19-win team. And they're going to take them and match them up against other 19-win team resumes, and we'll see where they fall. But I think that you're right. I think Notre Dame has to get to that 19-20 win mark.
By the way, it's important to mention, too, I think, in ESPN's latest bracketology, which came out yesterday, Joe Lunardi doesn't have the Irish in the tournament, which really isn't a surprise at this point because they're 3-6 in the ACC. But let's say they string together a couple of wins against NC State in the next few weeks against Boston College and such, some of the bottom feeders of the ACC. I think their chances do increase a little bit, but right now I think it's emergency time for this team. How do you think they'll respond? I mean, they have played so tough in these past couple of weeks, and pretty much every game, you guys feel free to disagree, but I think they have emptied the tank in every game. They've given everything they've had, and 100%. They've lost 6 straight, or 6 or 7 straight?
6
straight. So what do you think? Do they have the makings to put together a run?
They do. I think again, they're going to have to hold their heads high. They've been doing that the whole time. TJ Gibbs giving 100% effort. Every single guy out there, they're all giving it their all. And these games are just really going the wrong way. They're just, they're losing games that are close versus UNC and Louisville. And, earlier in the season, you go back to some of the Ball State games, these are really, really close losses that, they could have won. And this team knows that they can pull out these late game wins, but they're going to have to do a little bit of a better job, and they know that. They're holding their heads high, and they'll have an opportunity to make a run, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when we talk about these close losses, double overtime to Louisville, North Carolina by just, a couple points. And these are games that if the ball just bounces the other way one time, it's a completely different story. TJ Gibbs with 2 layup attempts there at the buzzer against North Carolina. One of those goes in. That's a win. It's a huge win.
It is.
And Notre Dame's off to a different path. Double overtime against Louisville, Austin Torres had a, kind of a circus behind the back layup that if it goes in, the game doesn't even go to overtime and Notre Dame walks away victorious. If the ball just bounces the other way a couple times, it's a different story for Notre Dame basketball.
Yeah, and if there's one thing that I know about a Mike Bray coach team, it's that they are going to fight, and they're going to fight to the finish. And Coach Bray, to his credit, has been very frank with his team about their NCAA opportunity chances and basically said, look, this is what we have to do. If you guys are up to it, I'm up to it. Let's go fight this thing. And I think that could propel them to a couple of wins here and increase their confidence. They get a couple guys back. They get DJ Harvey back in a couple of weeks. Farrell plays, let's say, 18, 20 minutes on Saturday and then comes back and gets 100% healthy. Maybe not 100%, but let's say 90%. This team really could make a run. It's just a matter of a few different things that I think has to fall their way. But it is an interesting time right now in Notre Dame basketball, especially given the fact that at the beginning of the season, and we talked about this last week, at the beginning of the season, nobody would have thought that this team would face this many challenges. I mean, the injuries and such, but I mean, we were talking about, hey, Notre Dame could possibly be like a 3 or a 4 seed in the tournament. At one point, Austin, they were number 5 in the country.
That's right. I think that they deserved that number 5 ranking as well. I mean, this is a team with Bonzie Colson, who is the player of the year preseason in the ACC. You have a guy,
AP All-American.
Absolutely. Matt Farrell, he's a really, really good player. And then you have the rest of the team. I mean, Martinez Gebben is a really strong senior. You have TJ Gibbs, an up-and-coming star. You have guys like even, Rex Pfluger would be able to chip in. But, injuries happened and things went the wrong way. I mean, if Notre Dame had beaten Ball State and beaten Indiana, those are 2 close games early in the season. They have 1 loss going into ACC play, and that's a really, really good-looking team and with a win over Wichita State, and that's a team that's deserving of that top 5 ranking. But things didn't go that way. They lost a couple close games, and then the injuries sort of started to pile up. They were absolutely deserving of that number 5 ranking. It probably could have been a 2 or even a 1 seed if things went really the right way during ACC play, but things didn't happen that way.
Yeah, Coach Bray he's talked a lot the last couple games about how lucky this Notre Dame team has been with injuries in the years past. This is a Notre Dame team that hasn't been crippled by injuries in the past few seasons. They've been very lucky to keep those senior leaders on the court, and all of a sudden I think it just all piled up on them this year. And I think that Notre Dame has done a very good job of responding. And when they get Matt Farrell back, this is a team that will go on a run, get their mojo back, and I think they get to 9-9 in the ACC.
Remember, the Irish were picked to finish 3rd in the ACC at the beginning of the year. That's obviously not going to happen. Let me get a prediction from you, Austin. Will they make the NCAA tournament?
I say they do. I think they get 19 wins and they make it.
John?
I think they make it by the skin of their teeth. I think they rattle off a couple of wins in the ACC tournament, and they'll make the tournament.
And there's nothing more dangerous, in my opinion, than an underdog Notre Dame basketball team in the NCAA tournament. We've seen it happen in years past. All right, so we're going to transition now to hockey. You are the resident hockey expert at NDTV, so the folks all over the place are relying on you to give them the scene, what's going on over at Compton Family Ice Arena.
So Notre Dame's not home this weekend. They're back at Penn State. They had the games versus Minnesota last weekend, and it was a couple of close games. They had a 1-0 loss on Friday. They were outshot in the game. I don't think anybody really thought that they deserved to win that game. They came back on Saturday, and they won that one 4-1. It was a much better game on Saturday than it was on Friday, and this is a team, again, that had won 16 straight games. This is a team that is a very, very good team. They're number 1 in the Big Ten for a reason. And I think most importantly, if there's one spot you're going to focus on for this Notre Dame hockey team, it's the defense. The team has allowed a total, and goaltending for that matter, they've allowed 24 goals in 16 games. It's a goal and a half a game during Big Ten play, and that is really incredible. It's a testament to Cale Morris, and it's a testament to the very experienced Irish defense. This Irish defense has just one freshman on the team. It's Matt Hellickson, and he has played extremely well. He's a draft pick of the New Jersey Devils. This is a team that has a number of players, whether it be Jordan Gross on the defense. This is a team that, it's got experience. It can score goals. 4 of their top 10 scorers are defensemen, so they're chipping in defensively as well. So this Notre Dame team is very, very strong defensively, and they're also good offensively. I mean, Jake Evans has stepped up this season. Andrew Ogilvie has stepped up this season, and there's a reason they're currently ranked number 2 in the country. They fell from that number 1 ranking, but again, this is a team that is probably going to get a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament as long as they play pretty well down the stretch.
What are some of the games that you are most looking forward to for the rest of the hockey season?
So this is a pretty big weekend. It's against Penn State. Ohio State's a good team. They're playing them later on in the schedule. Again, these are Notre Dame's home for a 2-game series versus Ohio State. That'll be a really, really good series. But I think that as long as Notre Dame plays pretty well throughout the rest of the way home, they should be able to get a 1 seed in the tournament.
And prediction in the tournament, what are you thinking?
I mean, anything can happen in the tournament. As we saw last season, Notre Dame was a 4 seed. They were really the last team in the tournament and managed to make it to the Frozen Four. So it's single elimination, just like the NCAA basketball tournament. So it'll be tough for Notre Dame to get to the Frozen Four, but I think they definitely have it in them. They're playing pretty well right now. They had 16 straight wins. So I think they should have a good opportunity of getting to the Frozen Four. But as everybody knows in hockey, there's a lot of parity in hockey. A team that's a lot worse than you can beat you for 1 game, and I think that they'll need a little bit of luck on their side, but I think they absolutely will have an opportunity to get to the Frozen Four and maybe win it all.
Give us an idea, Austin, of some of the teams that could pose the greatest threat in the NCAA tournament to the Irish.
So again, you look at the top of the rankings. You look at teams like Cornell, St. Cloud State, Denver last season. Denver is going to be a team that they're not quite as good this season as they were last season. Last year they were consensus number 1. Everyone was like going into the tournament. They thought Denver was going to win it all. They did. Notre Dame was beaten soundly at the United Center last year, 6-1. And Denver came into Compton Family Ice Arena this year for the first. I guess it was the second series of the year, at which point Notre Dame lost the first game in a shootout, and then they lost the second game in regulation. And that's a team Notre Dame's going to have to be able to beat them, because it's a little bit more than, does Notre Dame have the talent to beat them? They absolutely do. They're arguably the best team in the country, but they have to be able to get over that hump of beating Denver, and that's a little bit tough to do, and I think they'll be able to do it.
Great job, by the way. I mean, we're literally, John and I are sitting here like we know nothing about hockey, so we're totally relying on you for that. We appreciate the insight.
Love to see it.
And we appreciate both of you guys with your takes here. It's been a tough season for the men's basketball team, but it's still a fun team to watch. And even the game against Virginia Tech, when they started making that comeback, I mean, they blew the roof off of Purcell Pavilion. It was a great environment to be a part of. You boys were on the call, and I was sitting in the stands. But man, they're just fun to watch because they fight and they always play until the final horn. And as a fan, I appreciate that because I know it's not easy for them. It's not easy for us as fans right now. I mean, we expect them to have had a great season. And so it's been a little bit tough, but I think this is the point where I think we all have to band together and stick with this team. And just have faith and have a belief that they'll make a run, and I think they will do that. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you all tuning in down on the first floor in the Duncan Student Center, and we'll be on campus cable hopefully within the next week or so you can just watch us in the comfort of your own dorm. What's better than that? I don't think there's anything better than that. Thanks to the studio audience who was helping us out with their. Yeah, thanks guys. You guys are great. Yeah, make some noise. Come on. Yeah, there we go. Hey, by the way, we're on the second floor here in the Duncan Student Center, right in the middle. Come up, say hi. This is one of the new productions of Notre Dame Television with this beautiful new facility that Notre Dame has given us and invested in student media, which is such an important thing, and we appreciate it very much. For Austin Rooney and John Horlander, my name's Johnny Soper. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next week.